If you're disciplined, successful, working hard, and you still can't get rid of the stubborn belly fat, it might not be your diet. It might not be your workouts. It might be your stress. And I don't mean emotional stress. I mean what chronic stress does to your biology. I see this all the time. High performers, business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, they train hard. They eat relatively clean, but they're constantly on, and their body reflects it. Today, I'm gonna be explaining something most people don't talk about: cortisol resistance. So let's break this down simply. Cortisol is your survival hormone. First, cortisol is not bad. It's essential. Without cortisol, you don't wake up properly, you don't mobilize energy, you don't respond to stress. When you experience stress, physical or psychological, your cortisol rises. Cortisol raises blood sugar that gives you immediate fuel. This is survival biology. If you were being chased by a predator, cortisol saves your life. But you're not being chased by a predator. You're answering emails at 11 p.m. So acute stress, your body can be adaptive, but chronic stress over time becomes very problematic. Short bursts of stress, fine. But when stress never shuts off, that's when problems begin. Chronic stress becomes a loop. You obviously have work stress, it increases your cortisol. That increased cortisol disrupts your sleep, so you end up getting lack of sleep or poor sleep, which raises more cortisol, and that becomes a loop. Now what? You're stuck. Let's talk about how this leads to belly fat. When your cortisol rises, your blood sugar also goes up. Once your blood sugar goes up, our bodies try to release insulin to manage it. You gotta remember, insulin rises over time in response to carbohydrates or glycogen. And insulin is a storage hormone. So over time, this promotes fat storage. But here's the kicker. Chronically elevated cortisol is strongly associated with more abdominal fat deposition in the belly. And this is why some of the hardest working, most disciplined people carry fat right here. Not because they're lazy, but because they're wired. So what is cortisol resistance? Just like insulin resistance, you can develop cortisol resistance. When the cells are constantly exposed to high cortisol levels, they stop responding normally. So basically, they get overstimulated. When the cells become less sensitive, the body's gonna produce more cortisol trying to compensate, which is not good. So now cortisol levels go up. And from that, now your baseline cortisol levels start to rise. This is where we see fatigue, brain fog, belly fat, cravings, and sleep disruption. So let's talk about why high achievers are the most vulnerable. A lot of times they're busy, they have deadlines, they're working really, really hard, they're tired, so they're maybe taking caffeine or having caffeine overuse. That caffeine overuse obviously maybe could affect their sleep, not to mention they have late night screen time, which affects your sleep. So they're not sleeping good. They're trying to work out, they're overtraining, they're getting poor recovery because maybe their nutrition doesn't fit the training and activity that they're doing. So in summary, you stack high stress with high caffeine, sleep restriction, intense training, and bam, your nervous system downshifts. So how do we fix this? We don't eliminate stress. We need to learn how to regulate it. First off, you need to protect your sleep. Sleep is a non-negotiable. Second, make sure you lift, but don't overtrain. Heavy lifting improves insulin sensitivity in the long haul. As far as controlling caffeine, reducing stimulants, especially late in the day, so it's not interfering with the quality of sleep you get. Daily walking. Walking lowers stress. Breathing exercise regulate your nervous system as well. Having a stable blood sugar. Having your blood sugar stability reduces cortisol spikes, which obviously we just talked about what cortisol could do. Parasympathetic recovery. If you're killing yourself in the gym while sleeping 5 hours, you're adding fuel to the fire. Now, let me be clear about something. Cortisol is not the villain. You need cortisol. Without it, you don't wake up, you don't perform, and you don't respond to life. The problem isn't cortisol. It's living in a state where your body never gets to turn it off. When stress becomes your baseline, your nervous system never shifts gears. You're always in drive. So if you're stuck, if you're training hard, you're eating relatively clean, doing all the right things, and your midsection won't change, maybe the question isn't, what diet should I need next? But rather, is my body even in a state where it feels safe enough to let go of fat? Because when cortisol comes down into a healthy rhythm, your sleep improves, recovery improves, your insulin works better, fat loss stops feeling like a fight. And here's the truth most high performers don't want to hear. You don't need to push harder, you need to regulate better. Performance without recovery always breaks something. And if it's not your business, it'll be your body.